G'day there, James here, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of Why a Government Can Never Work and What to Do About It, comparing policies to principles. Where in this whole series, we're looking at 263 government policies and comparing them to the principles of objective morality to see whether or not the government actually has the right to impose its ridiculous laws, rules, ideas. And we've established so far in Season 1 and the start of Season 2 that no, it doesn't. That's why Season 2 is called Why a Government Should Never Work and What to Do Instead, whereas Season 1 was How a Government Should Really Work, and we discovered in our investigations, looking at policy per policy, that objectively, no, the government doesn't have the right to exist as an entity. Not just bad governments don't have the right, but no governments have the right. And that's why I welcome you to join me on this journey of discovering the objective truth, the reality behind governments, and the way a natural society should properly be functioning and organized. So in this video today, we're looking at intellectual property rights to see whether they exist, a government or anyone, a private corporation perhaps, has the right to enforce such laws, restrictions, and regulations. So join me as we dive into this. What is morality? Morality is a set of principles that explains the appropriate way humans should treat each other. Simple. I'll say that again. Morality is a set of principles that explain the appropriate way humans should treat each other. So whenever anyone's doing anything immoral, you can simply ask, is that the appropriate way to treat someone? I don't think so. That's inappropriate doing this, or that's actually appropriate. So what is immorality? Well, we could say immorality is bad or evil. And what is evil? One way to define it is the active intention to cause harm. And what's good? Which would be morality, being moral. Good is the active intention to perform actions which are appreciated. Whenever you do something for someone else with the intention that they will appreciate it, that can be considered good. And that can be applicable to the self as well. And when it comes to evil, if you're doing things with the active intention to cause harm, well, that's not good, that's evil. And why do I say active? Because intention requires energy, and energy is active, it's action. Even when someone pays their tax, jabs their child, or votes for a political party, they're still engaging in evil activities. Maybe it is unaware, but that's the point, because it's active intention to cause harm, because all three of those things are causing harm. And someone could say, well, they were just ignorant. They didn't know what they were doing. They thought they were doing the right thing. Aha, but it takes active intention to evade the truth. You must use energy. It takes action to evade what is true. Because the truth is out there about these nefarious, malevolent things. If you don't decide to willfully focus and learn the truth about these things, you are actively focusing on the opposite of evasion. And that takes action, intention, and energy. And those things all equal causing harm. Obviously, there are varying degrees of evil and there are varying degrees of good. And that's why I'm bringing awareness to you about objective morality, because morality is not subjective, it is objective. If someone disagrees with morality, objective morality, and they say, hey, I'm a murderer, I'm a rapist, I'm a politician, I'm a cop, I'm a banker, I'm a lawyer, I don't care about who I hurt, what kind of grievous, malevolent destruction I rain on the world, because it seems to work for me, well, that doesn't matter. They're still objectively violating objective morality. Just because someone doesn't believe in the fact that things fall down, or that they can't jump up and fly like Superman, just because they subjectively believe that Christianity is the ultimate truth, or Islam or whatever other religion is out there doesn't make it true. People have the ability to believe whatever they want. Subjective, fantastical delusions, or to come to know via reason, objective reality. Humans have a tremendous power to seek knowledge and to evade knowledge. If one subjectively uses faith and belief to evade objectivity and decides to willfully choose subjectivity, that's it's probably not okay in most circumstances, but it doesn't change the fact that there is an objective morality and an objective reality. And objectivity doesn't mean intrinsic. Intrinsic means inherent to reality that exists without a conscious mind to observe and interpret and determine. Because if there were no humans, there would be no objective morality, but there would still be a reality. Reality is an intrinsic thing. It just is. It exists. But morality is not intrinsic. It is objective because it takes a conscious, rational mind to be able to identify and recognize that truth. Objectivity is anti-subjective, and subjectivity is essentially just beliefs and feelings. You may dislike bananas, I like bananas. What's that based on? A feeling. What specific feeling? Well, the sensation of taste. You may believe Australia is the best place to live in the world. You may believe America is the best place to live in the world, but what's that based on? Subjectively, your beliefs or feelings. Unless you can objectively bring in facts, then it remains subjectivity. And morality is objective because we can prove why it's objective with facts. The simplest way to do it right now is to bring it back to the golden rule of equity. Treat others as you wish to be treated. Because a police officer, a politician, I'm just using the most extreme cases of evil that exist, they don't want to be treated the way that they treat other people. Some people may love to murder or rape or torture and steal, but no one wants to be murdered, raped, tortured or stolen from. And in the cases that someone says, yeah, I don't care about being murdered, I don't care about being raped, well then it's not murder and it's not rape then, because murder and rape means to be killed or forcefully fucked without your consent. If you're giving your consent, well then it's not murder or rape then. The golden rule of equity expanded, treat others as you wish to be treated, can be extrapolated and elaborated to don't initiate a violation of consent, which is part of rights. We all have the right to perform any action which does not initiate a violation of consent or cause harm. And obviously there are exceptions to the rule, but that is the rule. You can only have exceptions to a rule when there is a rule. A baby can't give consent to change their nappy, but it's not causing harm. If someone goes into the boxing ring to fight someone else, well, it's not violating consent, but it's causing harm. That's why it takes a rational mind to be able to interpret objective reality, because it isn't intrinsic. It's not something you can just point at and say, look, that's a rock. Either you see it or you don't. There's nothing we can do to help you further if you can't see the rock, or you can't see the table, you can't see the walls around you in a building, you can't see the sky. Morality is reducible back to reality. And it's very simple. When you just look at children, that's a very easy way to see that morality exists objectively, and you can reduce it and bring it back down to reality, because morality is a very abstract thing. We're going to talk about today intellectual property rights. Well, that's getting very abstract and very hierarchically distant from perceptual, observable, pointable reality. Let's look at kids. When you have, say, two sons, or you see two little boys and they're fighting, and you say, hey, why are you hitting him? And he says, well, he hit me first. And the boy who hit the other boy first is now crying because he got hit in return as a retaliation. And you say, hey, why did you hit him in the first place? And he says, well, I don't know, I want to hit him. You say, well, you shouldn't treat other people the way you don't want to be treated, right? That's a very simple thing to understand. If you don't want to be hurt, don't hurt others. That's just an objective fact. It's a lot less likely you're going to get hit if you're not hitting other people first. There won't be a retaliation if you don't attack in the first place. Basically, just ask him, do you want to be hit? And the first boy is going to say, well, no. You ask the second boy, hey, do you want to be hit? He says, well, no. Okay. If at this point you're still struggling to understand morality, where else do you go with that? Because that's reducing it right back down to reality. If you don't like being hit, don't hit others. Don't be a hypocrite. And the psychopathic, sadistic, insane murderer might not understand that, but that's because they're psychopathic and insane, and they prefer to discard objectivity to live subjectively. It doesn't mean that the objectivity of morality is invalid. No, it's just that they've invalidated it through their invalidation of their own reason and their abdication of rationality and acceptance of living an evil life, of abandoning reality, and instead choosing to live in a subjective fantasy, which is one's right to live in a subjective fantasy, but it's not one's right to use that fantasy as an excuse to hurt others and to objectively violate them. So always put every action through the filter when treating other people through good, evil morality. Is this an appropriate way to treat someone? Is this the way I would want to be treated? Are my actions with the intention of causing appreciation on the other end? Why? Because objectively, that's the way you want to be treated. Even if you're mad, even if you're evil, even if you're a police officer, that's the way you want to be treated. You want to be treated well. You don't want to be hit. You don't want all these bad things to happen to you. And to take it even deeper, you don't want things to happen to you that you don't want. Because someone might want to be punched, then they have an excuse to punch them back and get into a fight because they're angry and hurt, right? But they don't want things to happen to them that they don't want. That's an inescapable truth. And people want what they want. They don't want what they don't want. Objectivity. Not intrinsicism, because you can't have that without intelligence, without reason, without a conscious mind there to judge that. A valuer to value such a value as wanting what one wants and not wanting what one doesn't want. Because a rock can't have that choice. There can't be objective morality with rocks and tea towels and paper cups because they don't have a mind, they don't have consciousness or free will. And morality is non-existent without free will. Because if someone can't choose to be good or to be bad or to make any kind of choices, like a roll of toilet paper, a microphone, or a sock, well, they don't have free will, so they can be neither bad nor good. If a coin drops out of the sky and lands on your head, was it the coin's fault that it chose with its own free will to land on your head and pierce your skull? Or was it the person who dropped it from the top of the tower to assassinate you very sneakily? So with that being said, make sure you've watched the rest of the videos in the series, because objective morality is explained in more detail, especially those principles, because what are that set of principles that make up morality? Well, it's the law of morality, it's rights, it's the causality factor, it's the golden rule of equity, it's recognizing sovereignty. These are all principles, basic first starting points, which can be reducible back to reality, and they're applicable for many different concretized, specific circumstances. So concretization is that specific example of the two young boys hitting each other. So we don't make up a law or an objective fact or call something a principle when it's a concretized example, because that would be, don't punch little boys if you're a little boy. And then we'll say, what about little girls? Should little girls be able to punch each other? Okay, let's write this down too. If you're a little girl, don't punch other little girls. Well, what about if you're not a little girl anymore and you're in your teens? Is it okay then? What about a little boy hitting a little girl? What about middle-aged? Except you can't do that. That's why you have the principle, don't cause harm. Oof, there you go. That encompasses thousands, millions, almost near infinite different concretized specific situations. So that's what a principle is, to reiterate from the explanations much earlier in this video series. Make sure you've watched all the videos before cracking on into here, because it really does all piece together to get the full picture. You'll be doing yourself a great disservice if you don't go through every single video because I guarantee you will learn something in every single video, if not many things. Right, cracking on into intellectual property rights. Establish the protection of innovative ideas by granting their creators a period of monopoly over their use. Advocates of intellectual property rights claim that invention is incentivized by allowing the owners of ideas to benefit financially. The aim is to promote creativity and progress. However, in practice, the use of these rights tend to favor the resource-rich who can pay for rights registration and enforcement. So that brings up a point about rationality, empiricism, and objectivity. Bringing it back to objectivity. If an idea sounds rationalistically good, and this does not mean rational, it's just a form of thinking which is only in the mind, abstracted, away from reality. It's not tied, it's not tethered and connected to reality. It's only in the mind. If an idea sounds good, but then in practice, empirically, in reality, in practice, these rights only tend to favor the resource rich, being wealthy monetarily, then empirically it's not good. And you can bring that back to objectivity because you can also tie in the rationality, the mind, the abstract principle side of this theory, of this policy, of this idea about intellectual property rights. And again, it's telling us right here, it is a monopoly. To have intellectual property rights is creating a monopoly over an idea. And what do we know about monopolies so far? Is there ever any situation where you can have a good monopoly? No. Monopolies always raise the price, lower customer service, lower efficiency, lower productivity, and essentially they have to be unethical. Because to have a monopoly means you must be willing to use force against anyone else which is trying to, in this case, use that idea or enter the marketplace which you currently have dominion over. You're raising the price because there's no competition. The customer service is going to shit because there's no competition. You don't have to be nice to people. Because if people want what you have, there's nowhere else to go. So you can spit on them and they have no other choice because they need your shoes or your milk or your cars or whatever else you're selling. The effectiveness gets lowered, which means effectiveness is the ability to achieve goals, to reach objectives. And in this specific circumstance of monopolies, the word effectiveness means being able to meet the demand. The supply is ineffective. Why? Because it doesn't have to be. Because there's no competition. What's efficiency? Well, efficiency is being able to achieve objectives being resource-wise. And resources can be time, staff, physical materials, energy. So monopoly is inefficient because it doesn't have to be efficient. It can take longer to produce whatever it does. It can use a lot more energy than it needs to. It can use a lot more people than it needs to, while also paying them less. And it can use a lot more materials than are necessary. Inefficient, ineffective, too expensive, shitty customer service, totally unethical. And not to mention the quality. The quality is always inferior, substandard than it needs to be. Whether that's crappy quality milk, shitty shoes, poor quality t-shirts, rubbish TVs, etc. So we look at this part here. Establish the protection of innovative ideas. How is one to think that they have the right over an idea? If I create an idea to teleport, I don't even build the technical designs to teleport. And let's say it's my idea. No one else is allowed to copy it. No one else is allowed to write any books about it, make any movies about teleportation because that's my innovative idea. Someone says, well, teleportation was already around, that idea. Okay, just insert new idea that no one's ever thought of. And, oh, that's banned. No one else can use that. Let's say even I decide to make teleportation and I make a device and I don't use it. I don't sell it. I just patent it and say no one else is allowed to use that. Well, what a blow to humanity. How much better would humanity be if we all had access to teleportation? Like, Think about that. That would be absolutely fantastic. And for someone to withhold that technology on what could be an amazing accomplishment for society all across the world, that's evil. I want to address first this claim. Advocates of intellectual property rights claim that invention is incentivized by allowing the owners of ideas to benefit financially. No, it's absolutely the opposite. It disincentivizes inventions, because what happens in the real world is that the resource rich get hold of these patents and then they don't let anyone else invent, because they say the idea of teleportation, that's mine. The idea of EM generator, the idea for software and AI and coding and computers and flying and whatever else it is, no, you're not allowed to use it. We're going to hold it and not release it to the public. That's what happens in reality. It's a total disincentivization of invention. And even then, it's up to the inventor to then market and sell that product. Inventing an idea is just one part of it, and a very valuable thing to do for oneself and for other people, to create and invent. But you need to sell it now. You need to have business skills. You need to have marketing skills. There's a lot more to it. And I know, boo-hoo, you invented it, that's all you're good at, you don't want to sell, but that's just the reality. That's objective reality right there. That's just how it is. That's how people are. Just because you invent a great thing doesn't mean they're going to buy it if they've never heard about it. Just because no one will buy your invention if you don't market and sell it doesn't mean you have a right to use force against those other people who do copy your invention and then sell it more effectively than you do. Patents, copyrights, trademarks. Patents, best for inventors, apparently. Protects new designs, products, machines, plants, and processes. So they get 15 to 20 years protection, and it's going to depend on which country. Copyright, so it's best for authors. Protects music, art, architecture, literature, software, and choreography. 70 to 170 years of protection. When they say protection, it's not protection, it's monopolization. And assault, attack, offensive attack. That's all it is. Trademarks, best for brands, protects phrases, words, designs, and symbols. Indefinite protection. So someone thinks they have a right to trademark and monopolize and restrict and limit people from saying particular words. First, we need to look at what private property is. What is property? And this is not a definitive, all-encompassing definition. This is just a very good definition that can be added to. Private property is that which you have exclusive access to and right to use. Someone else can't use it, your property, without creating an imposition to you. Your body, your car, your home, your shoes, your website, for example. So it doesn't just have to be physical, it could be a website, which is technically non-physical. It's only an imposition on private property if the original, in brackets, which you appropriated, and then another brackets inside the brackets, an appropriation through either creation or transfer of the title. So it's only an imposition on private property if the original is modified, moved, or harmed in any way. It's not an imposition or violation if a copy is affected. We'll get into this in more detail next. Ideas are not private property. Everyone in the world can be using the idea of how to build a screwdriver at the same time, and there is no imposition. The idea of how to build a screwdriver, you get a piece of metal, put a handle on it, you need to carve out the end so it can fit into the female part on a screw, so you need to make it the masculine insertion tip on the end of a screwdriver. That idea, every single human in the world, tens of billions, hundreds of billions, trillions, millions, billions, all an infinite amount of people can be using that idea at exactly the same time and not be causing an imposition to each other. Yet, not everyone can be wearing your underwear at the same time. That would be causing a little bit of an imposition if you got 50 people trying to all put on your underwear at the same time while you're wearing them. For something to be property, it needs to have metaphysical limitations, like the underwear. It's a metaphysical, intrinsic limitation. You just can't fit another person into your underwear without modifying your underwear, without tearing it or ripping it apart. There isn't any metaphysical, intrinsic limitations on ideas. words, or designs. Someone else's use of them doesn't limit your use. So if I invent a teleportation device, everyone else in the world at the same time could be using that idea to build a teleportation device. There's no actual metaphysical limitation. And even on intellectual property rights today, there is no metaphysical limitation that's imposed because you can't do something like that because it's metaphysical, right? They've created a societal, legal limitation on using ideas and choreography and writing books, etc. But there's no metaphysical limitation. So that's why objectively it is invalid, the whole idea of intellectual property rights. Millions of people can be using the knowledge of coding to build software at the same time, but millions of people can't all be using your phone at the same time. So what I'm doing now is giving more concretized examples to help you solidify the principles of what I'm speaking about here. Giving examples often helps to fill in the blanks inside your mind. The only objective intellectual property that exists is your intellect, your mind, you. That's an intellectual property that is the only real intellectual property because your mind is yours. That is you, because that is what you are, your mind. People say, well, you are a spirit. Well, what is your spirit? Your mind. That's you. Your ideas, creations, inventions only remain solely yours if you stay silent. So if I didn't tell you about that teleportation idea I have, that would be mine because I haven't shared it, I haven't published it, I haven't made it public. No one else knows about insert other idea that no one's ever heard about because everyone's heard about teleportation. If you share your ideas, they are now in the dominion of society as a whole. It's become public. You've publicized it. You've published it. You can't put a cracked egg back together. If you're afraid of being imitated, copied, then keep quiet. It's your right not to share your ideas, but not your right to impose physical force against those who may action your ideas. If you post a product online, whether it's a PDF book, a video series, a course, anything you put online, you have to know that some people will download it for free or group buy it. That's just reality. Say if it's a $2,000, $10,000 sales marketing course. What people do is they'll have a group buy system. So 50 of them will each pay $100 each or whatever the price is, and they'll group buy this product. Instead of one person paying $2,000 and having 50 of them doing the same thing, they all just pay $100 each or $50 each or whatever the amount is, which in a way is a really good system for the buyers because they can get these expensive things for very cheap. There's even websites where you can pay a one-time membership of $80 and you can get access to hundreds of these different courses, which if you were to buy individually, they would cost you thousands and thousands of dollars. The whole website for $80 is worth what people are selling, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. And that can be pretty cool. But at the same time, that person who's selling it is trying to make money. And it's probably not the best thing to do by them. But is it something that the seller can be justified in using violence against you because you downloaded their product they put online without paying? Well, no, they don't have the right to use violence to you. It doesn't warrant that kind of response. Still, it is a bit of a dickish move because that person put a lot of hard work and effort into creating that product to not have it downloaded for free. They wanted you to exchange your dollars for the value that they are giving you. But there's lots more arguments coming. There's no point sending someone to prison because of it. Because someone downloaded your ebook or your course or your movie or your TV show. You don't send people to prison because of that. They didn't cause harm. They didn't cause a loss to you. They just made a copy. That's all. You have other ways to make money via groups, via retreats, via events. If this is a book you're selling or an online course or movie, there's other ways you can make money in the real world. And having these intellectual property rights and laws and patents and trademarks, it doesn't prevent anything now. There's websites where you can download and watch, stream all the movies, all the TV shows you want for free. People still do that, but that's illegal. That's against the law. Movies 4K is a great website where you can just watch everything you want for free. You don't need to pay for a membership to Netflix or Stan or Disney, all these dozens other ones. It's everything you need for all those sites you need to pay for on the one site for free. Sure, there may be some downsides that it's not as reliable as those paid sites, but most of the time it's really good. So it doesn't prevent anything now, these threats against people and the legalization of monopolies on ideas. So it doesn't actually cause a loss if you download things against people's consent. It's not actually stealing. It's not violating the law of morality by creating a loss, because the original remains unaffected. It's just a copy. It's pirating. That actually isn't immoral, because it's not causing harm, because it's not causing a loss. It's creating a copy. It's making more. In a way, it is a sign of appreciation, because it's still saying, hey, I want what you've got, I just don't want to pay for it. And it can be argued that it actually is a good thing as well. Continuing on. So there is unethical imitation, right? That would be a clone of you. If someone made a clone of you and it's a mimic, meaning it looks the same as you, a doppelganger, and they set it up to commit crimes in your name, in your image. This is a case of Law 3 violation, of being dishonest and unethical in your dealings, because that's unethical. And it's the same with AI software replicating faces and voices online. And that can be charged or sued as defamation or plagiarism of one's character, being, likeness, image, with malicious intent. So if you are imitating or copying someone with malicious intent, not just to make a parody or making fun of them, that's okay. But if you're using it to set up crimes in their image, that's when it's unacceptable, and now you are committing a crime, because you're creating a real victim. You're causing harm and creating loss. Because if a clone of you murders someone and then you go to prison because of that, well, that is a terrible crime, because you're being essentially kidnapped, detained, and tortured for something you didn't do, because someone else created a clone that looked exactly like you. That's where imitation is totally unethical. And the way you fix that is by using the technicalities and the terms of defamation and plagiarism, and it's simply just, you can charge them or you can sue them like with any other crime. You don't need intellectual property rights for this problem of unethical imitation to be solved, because that's all intellectual property rights are. It's an attempt to come to a solution to a problem. This could be one of those problems, but you don't need intellectual property rights to achieve that. Alright, so that's the end of episode 2, season 2. Why a government can never work and what to do about it, comparing policies to principles. In the next video, we continue on investigating and looking into intellectual property, copyrights, patents, trademarks. Join me, and we'll continue our investigations into objective reality, morality, and all the rest. I'll see you there. Bye-bye.